What is going on YouTube? Bryce Builds It All, your favorite AMP-IA and Part 147 instructor, back again with another video, and this time I'm going to be talking about what it takes to keep an airframe and power plant certificate current. So if that interests you, as always, please stick around. So what do you have to do to keep an AMP current? Well, in all my videos, most of my stuff is about being an aircraft mechanic, and an AMP is just our licensure, which it's not actually a license, it's a certificate issued by the FAA. But in order to keep that current, I have a lot of students ask, and I have a lot of people who've maybe been out of the industry for a while. They'll ask me on the Discord, or they'll send me an email, and they'll say something along the lines of, I am a licensed AMP, but I haven't worked on airplanes in over 10 years. I haven't worked on airplanes in over 20 years. What do I do? And the answer to this question is actually relatively simple. All you have to do to exercise the privileges of your AMP is use those privileges supervised for a 6-month period in the previous 2 years, consecutive 6 months in the previous 2 years. And that's stated in FAR Part 65. I will put a picture of that regulation up somewhere. But anyways, it is stated there that you must have 6 months consecutive experience in the previous 2 calendar years in order to exercise the privileges of your airframe and power plant certificate. So what that means is if you're working on airplanes and you lose your job, something happens, and you don't touch an airplane for a full year and a half, and then you go back to work, you're still within that 2-year time period, and you can continue working on airplanes without really losing any of the privileges of your certificate. However, some inspectors at the FAA do hold a very interesting opinion on this, and it is worth a note. And that is that if you haven't done a particular task in the previous 2 calendar years, then you should not be performing that task unless supervised by someone who has and or have been retrained on it. And I'll give you an example of that. If you haven't done fiberglass or composites since you took your AMP school and you've been an aircraft mechanic for, I don't know, 3 years, or even better, you've been working on engines in an aircraft engine shop for 3 years, then you can't go do a fiberglass or a composite repair all on your own at a new place of business. Now, this is usually never a concern because all maintenance teams are going to have a supervisor, and most maintenance shops will have a group of people that can supervise you while you perform the work. There is some interesting notes here based on that. If you have an AMP or whatever, or even a private pilot, I guess would work for this too, and you haven't done an oil change, right? And I'm using specific examples here, but you haven't done an oil change in 2 years. You've been working strictly sheet metal or something like that, right? If you get supervised to do an oil change, you can do as many oil changes as you want now because you've been supervised to do that task. And they look at that the same way as if your license or your certificate has lapsed completely. So you quit aviation, you've been out for 10 years, you come back, you're working somewhere, every single task you get supervised to do, you are now free to do on your own without the supervision of someone else. If that's an oil change, if that's a sheet metal repair, if that's changing a tire, whatever it is, once you have been supervised on it one time, you may now do it on your own without any assistance. And this is actually something that I did for a couple of friends when I used to work at a flight school. We would have people transition out of the military who had their AMP certificate but hadn't worked on an airplane in 5 or 6 years because they were doing something else in the Air Force. And in order to get current on their AMP certificate, they came and worked for us, and over the 6-month period, we signed them off, or we worked on these things with them. We worked on this, we worked on that, we worked on whatever. And after 2 years, after 6 months, their certificate is now current again to go out and work on airplanes in the wild, all on their own without any supervision. But how do we know that you've been doing these things? How do we know that you are supervised? And that's actually an interesting answer, and something that I recommend all AMP mechanics do, whether you're a flight line mechanic, whether you work in an overhaul facility for engines or repair station, or if you're like me and you do freelance general aviation maintenance, I recommend that you keep a personal logbook. Just like a pilot would keep a personal logbook of flight time and what they did, I would recommend that you keep a personal logbook and try to keep it as updated as you can for all of the tasks and things that you may do. Because if the FAA comes asking and says, hey, I see you're overhauling this engine. Is this something you've done before? And you say, yeah, I've overhauled an engine before. And they say, well, when was the last time you overhauled an engine or supervised somebody overhauling an engine? Well, then you can say, well, let me see. Pull out your logbook, flip back, and here we are in, I don't know, January of 2023. I overhauled an engine a year ago. And they'll say, oh, okay, cool. I see you keep a logbook. And that is perfectly acceptable for you to keep that logbook of the things that you do throughout your career. And it's also kind of nice to go back through there and see what things you haven't done in a while and maybe get somebody to supervise you on those things as well. A third, or I should say a fourth option, I don't even know where I'm at now, is to actually go back and get some sort of retraining. You can go and get retraining from a crash course. You can go and get retraining from the manufacturer for their aircraft. You can go to, like, let's say you wanted to overhaul engines. You've never overhauled an engine before except for in your A&P program. You can go to Lycoming or Continental and take their training. And you can sit through their training to learn how to overhaul an engine and get certified by them to overhaul engines. And then you are free to do it. But the truth is, once you have that A&P, it's good forever. It never expires. Even if you never use it again, once you have the certificate, all you have to do is complete your recurrency requirements to make sure that you can, or all you'll have to do is stay in compliance with your recurrency requirements, and you will be eligible to perform all of the privileges of that A&P certificate. So there you go, everybody. This was a little bit of a short one, but I hope it maybe helped clear some of those things up. If there's anything you'd like to add down below in the comments that I may have forgotten, feel free to do so. As always, leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe, and as always, go build something and be easy.
Yeah.
They wanted a cameo. These are my students. So they'll see you in the next one.